Today we're playing 100 Days of Pokemon Harvest Craft. It's a romhack that combines features of Minecraft and Terraria into Pokemon. You can craft stuff, look after your crops, take care of farming animals which have been turned into Pokemon, and socialize with your entire town. But there is also a very sinister backstory behind all of this, so let's hope we can complete it in 100 in-game days. Before we jump into it, let me know what your favorite video game of all time is. Mine is either Ark Survival Evolved or Persona 5. And if you could smash 4,223 likes, that would be amazing. And with all of that out of the way, let's farm our way through Pokemon Harvest Craft. Start off as the boy character and name ourselves Scott. I hope the great Michael Scott is proud of me now. But we don't get greeted by a professor, instead by a Trevenant. That says that we'll definitely be seeing him again.
What do you mean by that?
But luckily, this turned out to be a nightmare as we wake up in our bedroom with our mom next to us. She explains to me that the aide of the professor is waiting outside for us, as we'll be getting our very first Pokemon. After heading downstairs, our dad gives us a luxury ball, and just before we go outside, my mom gives me one last going away present, and that's a watch, which you can use to check the time and how many days we've been going for. We leave the house and our mom and dad say one last thing to each other which we can't hear, and that's, should we tell him? Definitely an ominous vibe hanging around here. The aide then gives me my Pokedex but forgot the Pokeballs and heads back to his lab to go and get them. The neighbor then comes up to me and says that he's so jealous that we have a Pokemon and invites me over to go and capture some Pokemon together with him in the nearby woods, as he can't do that himself. There's a couple of trees standing in the middle of a grass field, so he goes up to them but gets ambushed as it turns out to be a bunch of phantoms. Since he's in trouble, we now get to pick our starter, which can be Chespin, Froakie, or Fennekin, and since I never ever pick Fennekin, I decided to go with the little fox. Normally this would be a very easy battle because Phantom is weak to fire, but this is a Phantom with a question mark behind it, and it isn't weak to anything. In the end, we do manage to scorch it up, and everything seems to be fine now. So we're just about to capture some Pokemon, but we get ambushed once more. This time the Phantom attack me and drag me away to a far away land.
Oh no!
Which seems to be called the Light Woods. A random man comes up to me and says another one, implying that there's more people that have turned up here out of nowhere. After explaining what happened to him, he says that he found another trainer a couple of days ago that's about the same age as me, and the exact same thing happened to her as well. He also wants to know what the name of my Fennekin is, which turns out to be Hilda. He then goes on to explain that he's the mayor of Moonlight Town, which is the place that we're in right now, and believe it or not, but this town is cursed because nobody that ends up here can leave. People nor Pokemon. We follow the mayor to his house and decides to give me shelter in a nearby farm, which will be our house. But in order for us to stay at the farm, we do actually have to work. After looking around in my room, I found a crafting table where we can make tools like rope, axes, hammers, pickaxes, shovels, and shears. But you need certain materials to make these, and we don't know how to do that yet. You can also make Pokeballs, Great Balls, Ultra Balls, and Master Balls with certain apricots. There's also a furnace where you can make coals, buckets, and pots, and there is also a chest that operates as a Pokemon PC. I headed outside and the mayor is ready to give me a tour of the farm and show me how everything works. He starts off by giving me a bucket which we can use to water our apricots. But watch out, if you don't water an apricot for 2 days, it will die off. But watering apricots costs energy, just like doing anything in this game. And you only start off with 15 energy, but this will go up the further you get into the story. So you definitely have to manage your energy if you, for example, want to gather resources or take care of your farming stuff. He also shows me the Torchic coop and the Go-Goat barn, where you can store both of these species of Pokemon, breed them, sell them, milk them, gather eggs from them. I mean, you know how farming works. Two people then come up to us and they turn out to be the kids of the mayor, Katie and Bryce. We explain how I ended up here, and they seem to think that I'm the brother of the girl that already ended up here yesterday, which I guess we'll be meeting later on. The two of them are going into the woods, and the mayor says that they have to take me with them so that they can show me how to gather resources. Inside Light Woods, we meet up with Mr. Black, the miner of this town. We do our introductions. He says that he's going on a mining trip in the dark cave, but they forgot his pickaxe and he sent his son over to get one. And his son's name is Gray. I guess the mom will be named Mrs. White. Walter White would be proud. crowd. Two siblings head off together and Mr. Black tells his son to show me the ropes. He starts off by explaining what these tiny little trees are. You can chop them down with an axe to get wood, or you can punch them to get a little bit less wood and spend more energy. There's also vines that hang in the forest which you can pull down with your hands, or you can cut them down with shears. Again, if you do this by hand, you'll spend more energy and get less vine. The last thing he shows me is stones, which you can only crush with hammers. Your hands won't do anything. You can punch them as much as you like, but you'll only break your knuckles. With the explanation out of the way, he says that we have to head over to the library to try and find a way out of here. But before we head over there, I decide to pick some berries around my farm the next day. These will regrow every day, and you honestly don't have to do anything to get them, so they're just a free resource that don't even require energy to get. I changed my box to the most fitting one, a floral one with a wooden pattern. I went and checked out both of my pens, but there's nothing in here except for an incubator and a furnace. I then head into Moonlight town and run into the mayor and his wife. Her name is Lilia, and she runs a shop here in town that will help you with all your farming needs. She has a little welcoming gift for me, some apricorn seeds which you can plant for free. So that's what we do. We plant our very first seeds and start to water them. We head back to Moonlight town and talk to Katie, and as it turns out, you can also battle all of these NPCs, and if you are a boy character, you can also try to date the girl NPCs. And I guess if you're a girl, you can date the boys. You can give these people special presents like greens, fried egg, and all sorts of other foods, but you have to find out first which ones they like before their love points will go up. If you give them the wrong thing, they will actually go down. And if you have enough points with them, you can eventually propose to them too. In order to make all of these foods though, you need ingredients, which will spawn every single day in different locations. I myself just found a spinach in this grass patch right here, so make sure to check around. I went to talk to the shop owner and I totally understood what she was saying. We head over to Moonlight Square where we meet Mrs. White and Quinn. Mrs. White works in the blacksmith shop together with her husband, and Quinn is a Torchic farmer. I then had my very first battle with Gray, who had an Aron, which I just scorched to death. I then made myself to the other side of town, picked up some more spinach, went to the mayor's house who can change your Pokemon's nickname, and that's basically all he's good for. And after pulling one more turnip out of the ground, I headed over to the library and found the other trainer that got lost here a couple of days ago. She does in fact look like me, so I get why they would mistake her for my sibling. She explains to me that she lived in a foster home and got attacked by a Pokemon once she got her very first Pokemon and got dragged into this realm. To test how strong we really are, she wanted a battle, so we fired up her Munchlax and Eevee like it was nothing. She then tells me that her name is Stella, but she has to leave because she has some errands to run at Go-Goat Ranch. Before going after her, I punched some trees, pulled some vines, and gathered some honey from next to my house. I headed over to Go-Goat Ranch and met up with Aaron and Gia. They work here on the Go-Goat farm, and their grandpa, Buck, sells people Go-Goats and their medicine and their food and stuff like that. Once this meetup was over, Stella tells Buck that we will figure all of this out and we'll get out of here, but first we go and say hi to the Go-Goats, go back to the library, meet up with Stella, who says that we have to come back here at night. But first, I spent the next couple of days crafting some rope and cooked myself my first batch of greens. I grabbed some more wood and headed over to Erin to declare my love with her with some greens. But she didn't like greens because her love points didn't go up. So now my mission will be find the girl that loves greens and marry her. But first I went to Mr. Black, who sells mining packs, but honestly you're better off mining yourself because these cost way too much. You can also go to Mrs. White, who will turn 10 dirt into 1 clay for you. But dirt and clay aren't available to us yet. I then went back to the Skidoo Ranch because I wanted to know how much a Skidoo would cost. As it turns out, this game has 2 currencies, regular Pokédollars and gold. You can only get gold by buying it from the farming shop, which will cost you 500 Pokédollars per, which means a Skidoo costs a whopping 10k Pokédollars. And the only way for you to get Pokédollars is from battling the trainers or selling your resources, and that won't give you all too much. I then found Quinn at the riverbed, but he whooped my ass with his Growlithe. My very first loss of the run, and as it turns out, if you lose a battle, a day will also go by. So don't waste your time if your Pokemon aren't leveled up enough. With this loss, I knew I had to upgrade the team, so I evolved my Fennekin into Breaksin. I then went to one of those honey trees, and with the honey you can find next to your house, you can find Pokemon in here if you slather the bark every day. I then had enough resources to craft my very first hammer and smash my very first rock to get some stone. With this stone, I managed to craft a shovel, which we can't use yet because there's just nothing to shovel. My search to the green-loving girl was over already because it turned out to be Katie, so I'll do everything in my power to propose to her. I also went to the Torchic shop, but as it turns out, a Torchic cost 10 gold and we're poor. So I crafted myself a pickaxe and headed to the Dark Cave to do some mining. Here you can break these rock-smashing rocks with your pickaxe to get resources like leaf stones, fire stones, and water stones, which you can sell for a pretty decent buck. But you can also get gold and coal from these to craft more stuff and buy more things. Obviously, there's also Pokemon in here which you can capture, and if I try to head to the next level of the cave, it says that I first need to get 2 badges in order to get over there. So at this point, I have no idea how to get these badges, so we'll have to look around a bit. I went to the shop, sold all of my stones, and bought myself some much deserved gold. I spent my first hard-earned gold on a mining pack and got totally scammed. As I said before, don't buy these. I then crafted my first pair of shears with some iron I found in the cave, and my apricorns have also grown up a little bit, which is nice to see. On a Monday, I found Lilia standing out of her shop, meaning that her shop must be closed. So I went to talk to her to see if I could buy some gold, but as it turns out, she wanted to battle me. And she had a pretty decent team of Zigzagoon, Helioptile, and Apalm, which I flame wheeled and Psybeam to death, and after defeating her, she gave me my very first gym badge. And now I finally understand how you get those gym badges to advance further into the cave. See, this game works with certain days of the week, Monday through Sunday, obviously. And every single one of these days, one of the shop owners will have a free day off and roam around town. These shop owners will then serve as the gym leaders, but you have to beat them in a certain order. So for example, if you lose to one of these shop owners, you'll have to wait an entire week before you can challenge them again. A pretty cool and very innovative system, so from now on we'll definitely be keeping a lookout. I also found out how you actually advance time. Every time you enter a new zone, the hour will go up. So I made it nighttime and headed over to the library where Stella was. She tells me to follow her because this is going to be so funny. We sneak up to the mayor, who's standing by the riverbed and seems to be doing something very suspicious. He notices us and explains what's going on. He seems to be fishing, but isn't too good at it, so he wants to leave fishing behind and give me his old rod. So this event basically just unlocked fishing for us, but it was a pretty good one. Since this is the old rod, the only thing I could fish up were Magikarp, and since I only have my luxury ball right now, I don't really want to spend it on this thing. I did find a Heracross in the honey tree, and this is something I did want to spend my luxury ball on, but I had no other Pokemon to weaken it, so I tried to hit it with a move because I knew I wasn't going to capture it at full health, and I killed it. This made me realize that I needed more Pokeballs, but they are very hard to get because apricorns grow very slowly and there is no way of buying Pokeballs. By now a new place is opened up too, a restaurant of some kind. It's being run by Ellie and her husband Kai, and if we run out of energy for the day, we can come here to get some food and get our energy up again, but we have to pay some gold in order to do this, which could obviously be worth it. I just don't understand why I can't eat my own food to replenish my energy. Their son and daughter then walk in, whose names are Art and Angel, and they were just done picking berries. Art's a Pokemon trainer too and challenges me to a battle, which we obliterate immediately, and Angel suffers the same fate. As a reward, they give me 2 red apricots and a red plate, meaning that we can now craft our very first Pokeball if we want to. But Ellie herself also runs a move reminder business in trade for gold, but I don't think I'll ever use this. Since I needed more apricots, I decided to water some and head back to the Go-Goat Ranch, where we see Gia with a lost Zigzagoon and Skitty. She gives me the chance to adopt one of them, and I decide to go with Zigzagoon because tell me this guy doesn't look super cute. She herself will be taking care of Skitty, but we leave the Zigzagoon at our farm, and this is actually a pretty cool feature. Every day you can go and talk to this Zigzagoon and it will give you a random item or resource. Sometimes even items that you can't get yet. After this, I finally gathered enough money to buy my first Torchic. I also bought some Torchic food and went to take care of it. As it turns out, every day you have to feed these, otherwise they will get sick and then you have to buy medicine for 1,000 Pokédollars in order to cure them. And if you don't cure them for a day, they will die. So they are definitely a big time investment, but you can sell them on for a lot of gold if you start breeding them. They will also lay eggs which you can then use in your food, or you can sell these too. Because of those red apricots, I made my very first Pokeball and captured a Tailo with it named Vil, which I immediately evolved into Swellow. I also found out you can craft 5 coal if you combine 1 coal with some wood, which is actually a very good way of getting it, otherwise you have to spend a ton of energy mining it. With my second Pokeball, I captured a Diglett in the dark cave named Barry. We're over 20 days in at this point, and my apricots still have not fully grown. That's how insanely slow they go. With the eggs of my Torchics, I made my first fried egg the day after, and since I have 20 gold right now from all of the mining I did, I can now also buy my very first Skidoo. They work the same as Torchics, but you actually have to take care of them for a certain amount of days so that they evolve into Go-Goats. So I'll get back to you when that happens. Or the Skidoo could just be sick and waste 1,000 of my Pokédollars on medicine. What a great purchase. On Wednesday, Quinn was standing by the riverbed again, and now I know that this is actually another gym leader. He starts as a fire-type gym leader, starting off with a Flareon, who Swellow takes down with 2 wing attacks. Fletchinder did burn me with Flame Body, but also went down to 2 Aerial Aces, and his last Pokemon was an Arcanine. And with another Aerial Ace and Psybeam, we have finally won our second gym badge, meaning that we can move on further in the Dark Cave. What do you find here? Well, more rocks and higher level Pokemon, but these rocks can contain different items that will sell for more money. That's basically it for now. I also found a narrow path which we can't get through because it's blocked by sharp thorns, so I guess if we get further into the story, we might be able to get in there. Zig gave me some clay, then I went back to my Skidoo, who is now evolved into a Go-Goat. We can now make these guys pregnant to make more Skidoos and Go-Goats, or milk them. So I decided to make her pregnant with a special potion, and we'll get back to her once her baby is born. On Friday, Mrs. White's shop was closed, and she turns out to be the next gym leader, a ground type user. Despite not having the best team to take her on, I still managed to take out her Steelix with Flame Wheels from Hilda, and Swellow was able to take down Diggersby and Gliscor with Aerial Aces and wing attacks, giving me the Soil badge. Because Mrs. White is out right now, that means that her husband must be somewhere in town too. After checking everywhere, I couldn't find him, so I went into the mine, and in this new part that we've unlocked, he seems to be working. So we go and talk to him, and indeed, he seems to be the 4th gym leader. Because there is no Pokemon Center, I wasn't able to heal up my Pokemon, and his Aeron totally destroyed me, meaning that we have to wait another week to get our next gym badge. In the meantime of this next week, I did beat up Quinn again to get some extra money and evolve Braixen into Delphox. I bought myself a second Torchic and also found out that you can put eggs into the incubator that the Torchics drop in order to get some free Torchics for yourself. Once again, this will take some time for them to hatch. And by now, the Go-Goat has also given birth to her tiny little Skidoo, so now we have to spend even more money on resources to take care of these guys. But eventually, it might be worth it when we sell them. I have now gathered 3 clay from Zig, which allowed me to make my very first pot, and with this pot, I made a nice stew of glazed turnip. Let's hope Katie likes these too. I then milked my first Go-Goat. You can use this milk to either heal your Pokemon or to make some money. With that, the week has concluded and we go back to the Dark Cave to take on Mr. Black. He's a Steel type specialist with an Aeron, Probopass, and just like his wife, a Steelix. Do we have something that can melt every single Steel type in the world? A Delphox with Flame Wheel. So after spamming that, we gain the Metal Badge, giving us access to the next part of this cave. Once again, nothing here except for more rocks, more minerals that we can mine, and higher leveled Pokemon, but I do wonder what's at the end of this cave. this unlocked the next gym leader for me already, and that's Kai. He's been standing in front of the library on his day off, and once again he has a full team that's weak to fire types. But he does have some pretty cool bugs, like a Heracross that gets scorched, an Armaldo that gets baked, a Pinster that gets barbecued, a Beedrill that straight up just dies, and a Fortress that gets melted. So with the Swarm badge in hand, I thought that I could go and take on his wife as well, but that turns out to be a lie because she doesn't want to battle me at all. So I got stuck for a while and headed over to my Torchics because they've been breeding like cockroaches. If this keeps up, I will have the biggest Torchic army the world will have ever seen. My second Skidoo has also grown up, but I don't really want to breed more of them because they take up way too much of my energy and I want to spend that on gathering resources at this point. I also let all of my apricorns die out because I didn't have any energy left after taking care of my animals and my apricorns, and my very first 30 days have gone by, meaning that it's no longer spring, but it turns out to be summer now. That's right, every 30 days the season will change, which will allow you to do different events with people, but also change up the encounters in the wild. Because it's now summer, I decided to grab a little puppy Growlithe to guard the farm, and with the firestones that we've been able to mine up, I evolve it into Arcanine. Because the season changed, the ingredients that fall on the ground also changed, so now I can make my very first stir fry. Yummy yum yum. I grabbed a little tiny Dedenne who can hopefully protect apricorns for us. My Torchic army is just growing bigger and bigger by the day. As it turns out, it just needed to make it summer in order to take on Ellie, who turns out to be the 6th gym leader. She has fairy types as her specialization, and I made sure to put fire to her entire team with Hilda, taking down Dedenne, Togekiss, Curlia, Sylveon, and finally Aromatisse. After getting the Pixie badge, I got stuck for a little while because I didn't know where the 7th gym leader would be, so I planted some more apricorns and actually grew all of them up. I wasn't really taking care of my Gogoat all that well anymore, and one of them passed away, and that's when I decided to just sell my other one too. Making 15 gold in the process, considering they cost 20, I don't think that was really worth it. My Diglett also finally evolved into Dugtrio, and I then went back to the cave where Mr. Black got ambushed by a pack of Arons. Luckily for him, we were around to jump in and take them all down, and as a reward, we unlock Pokemon hordes. When we randomly run through the grass, we have a possibility of encountering a Pokemon horde, and upon defeating this horde, you get a couple of free items that will help you out throughout your journey. This can be literally anything from gold to turnips to spinach, so that's very handy. I went home to craft my very first Ultra Ball and advance time all the way up until fall. As you can see, there's now mushrooms growing everywhere, it's raining more often, and the wild Pokemon have changed again. I then went to the forest, and while I was walking through, I heard a scream of help. Erin was getting attacked by a gang of Gorgeists, so just like all the Jack-o'-lanterns that they're based off, I put them in flames and saved her. She explains what happened. She was just admiring the moon. In the middle of it, she got attacked. Luckily, we were here to save her, so after thanking me by giving me a Pixie Stone, she heads back home and we can go back to our daily chores. I captured a Phantom in the forest. Maybe this will wake up that Trevenant from the beginning of the game, but nothing really happened. So I went back to the shop to make myself rich and buy 27 gold bars. Because it's now fall, we can finally use our shovel to clear out puddles of mud. This will either give you dirt or clay, which you can use to make pots. Potatoes are now also on the ground, so I made my very first baked potato, which I love to eat in real life too. Over all the weeks, I've also accumulated a ton of love points. I'm at 46 right now. I'm guessing you need to get to either 99 or 100 in order to propose, so we still got a ways to go. Because we can now get further into the cave, I also have the ability to dig up fossils. You can revive these fossils by talking to this stone in the evening. Personally, I only got a couple of anoriths, so nothing really all that notable. That was everything we could do in the fall, so it's time to head over to winter, and as you can see, all of our crops, our entire field is wiped out by snow, which means no more growing apricorns for us. The lake just in front of the mayor's house is also frozen up, which means we can now do some ice skating. I'm just happy this hasn't turned into an ice puzzle. I was then going to mine at the dark cave, but just in front of it I get stopped by Art, who explains everything about the fossils and that he himself also managed to resurrect the fossil. So after beating him in a Pokemon battle with his new fossil Amora, we get ambushed by 2 teams of Snorunt. An easy win for us obviously, but it's really weird that all of these Pokemon attack people out of nowhere. Art even goes on to explain that that never happened before we arrived. We don't think about it too much, and he decides to thank me by giving me an XP share, something I definitely could have used at the beginning of the game. We leave him alone, go on a couple more days, and eventually end up in the library where Stella is reading a book. As it turns out, this is the book that explains why we're trapped here. And this is how the story goes. Trevenant cursed this town many years ago to take revenge against the people who destroyed his Pokemon's habitat, and also a person called the Harvest Goddess seems to have betrayed him, but we have no idea who this could be. Apparently the Harvest Goddess was the protector of Moonlight Town. She got married to a human here, but nobody really knows who that is, and they lived happily ever after and even had a child together. The day this child was born though, Trevenant decided to attack the town with his Pokemon army. While this war was going on, Trevenant planted trees that could never ever be cut down or destroyed, hence why everybody is trapped here. As it turns out, the Harvest Goddess, her husband, and child were able to get out in time, but the rest of the people that we see here are still trapped. We now know that we have to go and find Trevenant if he's still alive, defeat him, and this might actually lift the curse. So we go out to investigate. But first I delivered some dirt to Mrs. White to get some free clay, bonked my hammer against a tree to wake up a Mankey who attacked me, and then the night of that day, we went back to the library and ran into Mr. Mayor. He says that he hasn't seen Stella in a couple of days and is getting worried and asks if we've seen her. We tell the mayor our plan of finding out where Trevenant is and that she's probably out searching for clues. That's when the mayor says that there is narrow pathways in the trees that we can enter and maybe we can find some clues there. If you've ever played Generation 5, you know he's talking about hidden grottos that we've just unlocked. There's 3 hidden grottos, but honestly there's just a couple of encounters in there and a couple of items. Most of these are pretty useless. A couple of days pass, and just as I'm about to head into Light Forest, Stella comes up to me and wants to investigate the woods together. As we're going to the fossil place, Trevenant all of a sudden shows up and abducts her. He says that everything that's happened up until this point was planned, all of the Pokemon attacks, us ending up here, everything was him. He then ends his sentence by saying that we're going to stay here forever, and we wake up in an eerie cave next to Stella, who explains that this is the dungeon that people use for mining. She tried to fight Trevenant but lost, so we say to her that we will take him on and win. She honestly doesn't think we can do it because he's teamed up with a lot of strong Pokemon, and first we actually need to get out of here because we're stuck. That's when Gray comes in and saves us because he was able to tunnel all the way up over here. We arrive back in town and thank him for his help. As it turns out, he saw Trevenant going through that one path with prickly thorns before that we couldn't enter, so he just followed behind it and ended up where we were. A ton of Gorgeists then attack us once more, but Buck throws out his very own Trevenant and saves us. So we explain everything that happened with Trevenant and how we're going to try and take him on. But Buck thinks that he's way too strong for us. He's already heard everything about the legend of Trevenant and can't let us harm ourselves by going into his lair. So we strike a deal together. If we manage to defeat Buck in a Pokemon battle, he will allow us to go and take on Trevenant. So we wait until it's Wednesday again, go to the Go-Goat farm and meet him outside for our battle. He seems to specialize in grass types, as we've just seen from the Trevenant that he saved us with, and he starts out with a Sunflora, which we flamethrower, just like Ludicolo, Trevenant, Foulplume, and lastly Leafeon. Why is everything in this game weak to fire? Maybe because it's a farming game. Anyway, I definitely picked the good starter. With the Dew badge in our hand, we head back to our farm and Stella is waiting in front of our house. She will be our final challenge before we go into Trevenant's lair together. She serves as the last gym leader too, but only has a Gardevoir as our Pokemon. So you know what we did with that? No, not that. Stop thinking dirty. I obviously just burned it. After this, we get the brain badge, and she also gives me the blue feather, which we need in order to propose. She tells me to go and give this to the special person in our life, and after we did that, we have to go back to the library and find her. So we go to our one and only true love, Katie, give her our last batch of green beans, and propose to her with the blue feather. But she doesn't really seem to care. She accepts it though, but nothing really happens. She doesn't care that we might die by taking on Trevenant. On that sad note, I decided to check out the cave one last time by going all the way to the end, because now we have 8 badges, but it just turns out to be a loop between the last 2 rooms. There is nothing at the end of this cave. It's literally just for mining, which I thought was pretty disappointing. I head over to the library, talk to Stella, and we move to Trevenant's hideout. It's surrounded by gorgeists and a glitching out woman that also looks like an Aron. Don't know what that's about, but we enter the cave together and confront Trevenant. He immediately jumps into a Pokemon battle with me, and I personally don't know how a dead tree gets 6 Pokeballs and turns out to be a Pokemon trainer, but I'm ready to take him on. He starts off with a Yanmega, which we one-shot with Nihilda's flamethrower. He then puts himself on the battlefield, and with 2 fire blasts, he becomes even more dead. And normally it should be over now because we defeated him, but he still has 4 Pokemon left. So I heal up Hilda with one of my fresh milks that I've gathered from my go-goats and decide to sack a couple of Mons. I then throw out Swellow and take out Scrafty with it, sack my own Phantom as he takes it out with a Brave Bird, throw out Hilda again, hit a couple of Psychics, and the Firebird crashes into the ground. I sack my Swellow to once again heal up Hilda because I've taken way too much damage. I hit 3 more Psychics and I'm left with only 44 HP remaining once we take out Arcanine. Luckily, his last Pokemon is a Blossom, which is weak to me. As we burn this last piece of grass up, we finally defeat Trevenant. He disappears into nothing and says that he'll be back again, but me and Stella can finally escape this nightmarish town. As we walk out of the cave, I wake back up in my bed next to my mother, and the same thing happens again. The aid is outside, ready for me to pick my first Pokemon, which means we're trapped in an endless loop. We get teleported back to Moonlight Town, and then you can obviously explore more, but there is nothing really to do anymore. But I know that my dad and my mom are those 2 people from the book, the Harvest Goddess and the man that she married. It's all super obvious, and it's a pretty decent story all by all, but the gameplay in the end does get pretty repetitive. It is a cool twist on Pokemon nonetheless, so I'm going to give this game a 6.5 out of 10. Do keep in mind that it's already like 7 or 8 years old, so this could definitely be improved upon. So with all of that out of the way, let me know in the comments down below which game you want me to play next. But for now, I'm going to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. If you want to do so yourself, you can click the links in the description. I appreciate it a ton. And as always, people, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you all next time.